All right, lovely. Okay, so everybody, just a little bit of background. I don't have very much experience, professional experience in this area. Everything that I'm going to say this afternoon is from my own personal opinion. It's a summary of the research that I've done. My personal interest in this is that we have had a heat pump and associated bits and pieces installed recently. So I have needed to do some research in order to make the necessary grant applications, which I haven't yet done. So I'm only part way through the process. But I can tell you what I found out so far, and hopefully that will be useful and interesting. And as Surinder said, we can take some questions at the end when I've got through the bits and pieces that I think might be useful to talk about and to show you.
You're quite quiet, W.
Okay, I'll slow down a bit then. All right, so let me show you a couple of pictures first of all. If I can just swap this. I'll talk around this for a minute. This is what a heat pump looks like from the outside, okay? It looks like a very large air conditioning unit. It took them a couple of days to install. It sits outside our house. It is relatively quiet, and it produces quite a lot of cold air. So that's the first one. Let me now switch to what it looks like from inside the house, which requires me to do that. Okay.
We can see that.
Has that showed up?
It is, yep.
Yeah, okay, so this is what it looks like. This is all of the electronics and the technology that sits inside the house. It has replaced a previous gas boiler, but takes up rather more space. It has a floor-to-ceiling water tank and quite a lot of pipe work and quite a lot of electronics. Since it was installed, it ticks over very quietly in the background. Okay, so now I can show you a different photo just for context. So as part of the same installation, we also had solar hot water panel put on the roof. So the solar hot water panel heats the hot water in the house, and primarily or solely, and the heat pump primarily heats the central heating in the house. In fact, the heat pump will do both, but obviously it's much better if we can get the solar hot water panels doing as much work as possible, because that aspect of the installation is free to run. So the heat pump is there in the background and gets the water up to temperature if the solar panel doesn't get the temperature up high enough. So over the past week or so, just by way of example, it's not been particularly sunny, and that solar panel has not actually done a great deal of work. Okay, so there's a little bit of background. That's why I am particularly interested in this at the moment. In order to support the installation of this kind of technology, the government has a scheme running called the Renewable Heat Incentive, in order to encourage people to install heating systems which do not depend on fossil fuels. So I'll just give you a little bit of background to heating and the renewable heat incentive. Actually, UK buildings account for about 20% of all of the UK's emissions. That's from a Committee on Climate Change report. Almost no progress has been made in decarbonising heating. About 84% of homes are still heated by the combustion of gas supplied through the national gas grid. As CO2 is emitted from combustion of all carbon compounds, part of the answer to curbing climate change lies in using heating systems which don't use combustion. The alternative is heat transfer, which means using heat pumps to transfer heat from the ground source heat pumps, or from the air source heat pumps, to heat buildings. The RHI scheme is a payment system across the whole of the UK for the generation of heat from renewable energy sources. It operates in a similar manner to the feed-in tariff. It was introduced in 2008. So I'm just reading from my note here to skip over that bit. Okay, so the scheme went live in 2011 for non-domestic buildings and was extended to domestic buildings in 2014. So although it's been running for about 6 years, it's still a bit niche. Let me just pull up another report if I can and show you if this is going to work then. I did try and pull a lot of this into a PowerPoint presentation, but because so much of the information is on PDFs published on the internet, it's very difficult to pull that information out of PDFs. So let me show you this instead. Okay, so now hopefully what you can see is an Ofgem report, the Domestic Renewable Heating Incentive Quarterly Report, issue 24. It's fabulous, fascinating reading. Surinder's brought me a microphone. Hold on a moment. Is that really cool? Can I have a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to whether or not that's improved the sound? Does that improve the sound? Yeah, a bit. Okay, all right. So I've pulled this document up to show you because it illustrates just how few people are taking advantage of this scheme. These green bars over here obviously show how many installations have been made this year, and perhaps not surprisingly, there's been a reduction in the numbers due to the COVID crisis. But it's not much of a reduction. In previous months, it's running at about 800 or 1,000 installations a month. So over the lifetime of the scheme, there's still only 79,000 installations, and that consists of all of the different technologies that the scheme covers. So it's not all air source heat pumps. Some of those will be biomass boilers, and some of them will be ground source heat pumps. But it struck me when I looked at these figures that the numbers are actually quite low, and although the scheme seems to be quite generous across the whole country, not many people seem to be taking advantage of this, despite the fact that the scheme is now something like six years old, a little bit over 6 years old. Okay, so I did a bit of research on the future of the scheme as well. The government has confirmed that it will run until the 31st of March 2022. Earlier this year, they announced that they will consult on introducing a new clean heat grant from 2022. as a replacement to the RHI scheme. The Committee for Climate Change has recommended, I'll just read a little quote from them, the 29 million existing homes across the UK must be made low carbon, low energy and resilient to a changing climate. This is a UK infrastructure priority and should be supported by the Treasury. Homes should use low carbon sources of heat, such as heat pumps and heat networks. It does appear that the government plans to move away from a subsidy scheme towards issuing instructions or prohibitions. As an example, from 2005, it's no longer been legal to install a gas boiler which was not a condensing boiler. Similar types of compulsion and prohibition may be seen in future, possibly linked to planning permission. Another example would be that the Chancellor announced a ban on connecting gas to new build homes from 2025, and that was announced in the spring of last year. It is possible that such instructions will also come into force before the RHI ends in March 2022. The other thing that overlaps with that is that today the Chancellor has made an announcement promising £1 billion worth of funding in order to reduce the carbon footprint of homes. My understanding of that commitment is that it is towards insulating homes. So cavity wall insulation, loft insulation and underfloor insulation. And those things are aimed at reducing the demand for heat. It is a completely separate scheme, and I don't think that it impacts on the RHI scheme at all, which probably means that you could apply for both grants. But as the announcement made today is very hot off the press, I have no idea how the scheme is going to work in practice. Okay, so some of the features of the RHI scheme. There are different versions of it for domestic and non-domestic properties. The scheme is administered by Ofgem. It results in quarterly payments, which are index linked and tax free. The grant is intended to cover or substantially contribute to the whole of the installation costs. I saw the figure in a few places that it's been calculated to give a return on investment of 12%. But I'm not quite sure what that means in practice. Somebody might be interested in those numbers. It's also worth noting that different renewable technologies can be combined. So as per the photos of our installation that I showed at the beginning, you can combine an air source heat pump with a solar hot water system and apply for the grant, apply for 2 separate grants. Okay, so because this presentation was going to be about the RHI in general, I have included a little bit on the non-domestic side of things, in case anybody has any influence over either business premises or any interest apart from the domestic side of things. So it is slightly different. The annual subsidy on the non-domestic side lasts for 20 years and is paid at a slightly lower rate than it is on the domestic side. What else doesn't have on non-domestic? Oh, but it provides support for community and district heating schemes. So it would be possible to put a renewable heat system in for a collection of properties, and that would qualify for the non-domestic RHI grant. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say on the non-domestic side. The domestic side, which is perhaps what we're all a little bit more interested in. Let's see. The value of the tariff that's paid depends on which renewable heat systems are used and the scale of generation. The tariffs are larger than for the non-domestic RHI, but are paid over 7 years rather than the 20 years for non-domestic buildings. What rates look like. I'll just share that screen with you. So, okay, so now you should have a mostly green table showing. Is that what people can see? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So this shows that there are, so what have we got in this table? We've got 4 different technologies: solar thermal, ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps, and biomass boilers. And the rate paid for each of those has varied since the beginning of the scheme. So from January 2015 all the way up to April 2020, the rates have changed very slightly over the years. Each of these are also shown in this little graph up here. That probably didn't share, did it? I've just clicked on something, it probably didn't make any difference to you, did it? So this shows the top line is ground source heat pumps. The red line is biomass boilers, and the blue line, that's blue, is shows air source heat pumps. The scheme is reviewed every quarter, and the rates are adjusted. But if once you have successfully applied for the scheme, the rate that you join the scheme at will then not be subject to any future changes. The rate that you join the scheme at will then be index linked from there onwards. So there appears to be no risk that you could join the scheme at one rate, and then at some point in the future, the scheme is completely changed, and the rate that they pay you is completely undermined. These are the rates that were applied for new applicants at that stage. Okay, so I've described the different sorts of technologies that can be used. There are some limitations about what you can use the systems for. You can't use solar thermal panels to heat your house. You can only use those to heat the water. You can't use them for any other purpose. So you can't use them to heat a swimming pool. That's one example that jumped out at me. All of the different technologies are described in detail in the essential guide for applicants that's available on the Ofgem website. In putting together the information for this, I have a separate Word document that includes the hyperlinks to all of the reference documents that I've used. So if anybody's interested, make a note, tell us at the end, and we can send you a copy of it. It is usual, I think, to install air source heat pumps, and for them to completely replace any boiler system that you've previously got, whether it's an oil-fired boiler or a gas-fired boiler. It is possible, I understand, to install a hybrid system where your existing fossil fuel boiler is kept as a backup for extreme weather circumstances. I haven't really investigated that in any detail because it wasn't something that we were interested in pursuing. In order to, if you were going to pursue that, then you would need a lot more monitoring installed in order to get the grant paid. Yeah. Okay. So what else? I'll just run through the process overview from start to finish of replacing a boiler. So the process that we went through was we got surveys done, we had quotes from several different people, we then got an energy performance certificate, which, because we've been in the house for a while, we've never done before. That may be something that you are already familiar with. An energy performance certificate is a summary of the energy characteristics of your house, and it is a key document for the RHI scheme. I think I've got a copy of one here, which I'll just put on screen.
That's it.
There we go. So here is here's the EPC that was done by our installers for our house on this installation. It includes a calculation for what they believe the heating requirements and hot water requirements of the house will be in practice. It's done by a qualified surveyor. They come and do lots of measuring and understand the thermal characteristics of the house. What that means in practice for the scheme is that the payments are calculated on the basis of what the EPC says. They are not, the grant is not based on your actual usage, if you see the difference. The EPC gives what's essentially a deemed figure for what they expect your heating requirements will be, and the RHI grant is based on that for the duration of the grant funding. So although the grant is calculated on the basis of a number of pence per kilowatt hour, the kilowatt hour figure that is used is the one that's shown on your energy performance certificate, which is produced as a result of the survey that's done at the beginning of the installation. One of the things that's included on the EPC is recommendations. I'm just looking for where they are on here. Here we go. Top actions you can take to save money and make your home more efficient. So when they did ours, the recommended measures were only floor insulation. If when the certificate is produced, they recommend that you need either cavity wall insulation or loft insulation, that work must be completed and evidenced before you can apply for the grant for your air source heat pump or whatever technology you use. So So it is quite a key document, and its recommendations need to be followed as part of applying for the scheme. Okay, so once you have chosen your installer, so installers must themselves be registered with something called the MCS scheme, the Micro Generation Certification Scheme. So they themselves have to be qualified, registered, quality assured, and carry the MCS registration of logos. So this is not something that you can do yourself, and it's not something you can get your regular plumber to do. It needs to be done by somebody who's a member of this national scheme. Okay. Once the installation is complete, and ours took a little bit over a week to do from start to finish, the installers then register the installation through the MCS scheme, and that registration then allows you to make an application for an RHO grant against that registered system. The application process, which I think I said at the beginning, I haven't started yet because I haven't got all my certificates through, is all done online, and as far as I can see, it's pretty straightforward. Once you've got all the information through from your installers, it's a pretty straightforward application process. Okay, what else have I used? So, share another document. So what you should now see on screen is entitled Domestic Renewable Heat Incentive Domestic RHI Payment Calculator Report. So there is a tool on where would that be? I think it's probably on the Ofgem website, or maybe it's on the BEIS website. I can include a link to that, which allows you to see, to get an estimate for what your grant payments are likely to be over the duration of the 7 years. That's a pretty easy form to fill in. I did that a couple of times before I got started because I was a bit anxious about whether or not the grant money was actually going to pay the not inconsiderable capital costs of the installation. And the information that you put in here, if you've got an EPC already, then you can put information from the EPC. If you haven't got an EPC, then you need to know a little bit of information about your house, like the floor area and how much you spend each year on gas and electricity, and then it does the calculations for you and spits the numbers out, and will leave you feeling either reassured or not really so reassured that the grant money is going to cover the installation. Okay, so I've talked about the couple of components of the system that of the scheme that we are interested in, namely air source heat pump and solar hot water. There is another component for which grants are available, which is called the metering and monitoring service package. This is a set of monitoring gauges which can be added to your air source heat pump, in our case, which allows you to monitor its performance once it's been installed. I was a bit surprised that all of this wasn't already included with the equipment when it was installed, but for some reason it doesn't come as part of the package. And if you want the information in order to understand how well your system is performing, then an MMSP is additional basically. Our installers, I think all installers will charge extra for that. But if you make that commitment and get the wherewithal to be able to monitor it in detail afterwards, there is a separate RHI grant available, which seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me. If you're going to install this technology, it's nice to know that it's working the way that it should. And as I say, I was a bit surprised that it didn't, that all of this kit didn't come with the monitors all inbuilt, but it doesn't. You need to pay extra for it, but there is an RHI grant which covers it. The output from that, which I might be able to show you separately. Get to it. So if I share this screen instead, what you should now be able to see is a graph for June. Our system went live on about the 20th. Some of the gauges didn't get turned on until about the 24th, 25th. This graph, all of the data is collected by separate sensors. It's collated on a data logger, which updates the information to the cloud. I can access it using a web page, and that shows at what point the air source heat pump is kicking in and what it's doing and how much energy it's putting into the system. That's allowing us to change our usage and change our behavior slightly in order to get the best out of the system. I prefer to see things that way. I think without all of this information, all you would be left with is digital gauges and none of it being collated online, producing nice graphs for you, which I very much prefer to look at. Okay, so that's a bit about the MMSP system and the data logging that's available. I made a few notes under the heading of benefits. The obvious environmental benefit is that with one step, you get away from using fossil fuels. That's the principal environmental benefit. It does take electricity to run the air source heat pump, but that can be mitigated using a green tariff, meaning basically for us that all of our heat requirements are now met using renewable energy, which is a big plus for us. Financially, the costs of the system can be split between the installation costs and the running costs. So I'll talk about those separately. I think I said earlier, the RHI is intended, the grant is intended to cover or substantially contribute to the installation costs. Yeah, some of this I've already said. So, just confirms what I said earlier on, actually. I'll read it out. It's calculated on the EPC for the property. It includes a calculation for the amount of heat needed to keep the property comfortable and to supply hot water. So it's based on expected rather than actual usage. Quarterly payments are then made for the duration of the 7 years. There are circumstances where the expected usage can't be calculated, and then metering would be required in order to support payments based on the actual usage. But those are for quite bespoke systems, so I haven't explored that in any detail. Okay, running costs. Now, obviously, the cost of the gas will obviously now be zero because we've come off gas, but the heat pump runs on electricity. So we obviously use more electricity than we have done. In fact, electricity is about 4 times the price of gas per kilowatt hour of heat produced, but a heat pump only uses about 1 kilowatt of electricity in order to extract 3 or 4 kilowatts of heat out of the air. So you use more electricity, and the two things sort of offset each other. So although our gas bill has now gone to zero, we are expecting that to be offset by a sort of corresponding increase in our electricity payments. Obviously, if you produce your own electricity, or if you use a differential tariff like Economy 7, or one of the Octopus flexible tariffs, then you might expect some overall reduction in running costs. Okay, I talked about the environmental benefits, and gosh, and we are now at about 4:45. So that I've now run through pretty much all of the notes that I've made. I hope that gives a little bit of an introduction to the scheme. Sorry if it was all a bit dry. So let's go to, has everybody got any questions? So can you unmute yourselves, or does that need to be Surinder?
I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my query, jargon route, thanks for running through all that. But
Okay.
when you said you altered your behaviour, what did you do differently?
Oh, so so we could leave the air source heat pump on so that it will always heat hot water to 50 degrees. And then we would always have a tank full of hot water. And then when anybody took a shower, you could guarantee that there was going to be hot water in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
But if you did that, the air source heat pump would kick in before the solar hot water kicked in. Yeah, because the water temperature might be cool in the morning. So the system's not going to wait for the sun to come out. It's just going to say, oh, your hot water temperature is below 50 degrees, and it'll then heat it up to 50 degrees. So when the sun does come out, you know, next week maybe, who knows, then it would not have an opportunity to kick in. So we are trying to understand what the best way is to set the system up, and when it's best to be trying to use hot water in order to get the most out of the system.
Okay.
It just highlights that it is a different way of heating the house. It's a different way of heating hot water, and there is the possibility to tweak the way that we heat house and heat the water in order to get the best out of the systems.
But I think it's fair to say that you could run it and have exactly the same experience as you do if you had a gas boiler, if that's what you wanted. But because we're who we are, we keep trying to tweak it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So you've got three nasty little, you've got to fill out three different applications for grants, haven't you?
Yes, that's right. Yes, and it's all done online, but Ofgem very helpfully reproduce all of the questions that you are going to have to answer online, and they're all available as PDFs. So you can read through what you're going to be asked before you actually go online to do it. And when I looked at it, I wasn't at all fazed by the application forms. It all looked very, very straightforward. Obviously, you need to get all of the certificates from the installer, and you need your EPC, but then it just seems to be a matter of transferring information from those other forms and certificates onto the RHI grant application. It all looked pretty straightforward. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the major drawbacks of this scheme is that you have to trump up the capital cost yourself initially somehow.
I was just wondering that.
Yeah, so you get paid, it gets paid back to you over 7 years.
Yeah.
You have to find a way of getting the initial capital cost up front.
Yeah.
Which may be one of the reasons why the uptake's not huge.
Yeah.
But if you're in a position to fund it initially, then over 7 years it's not going to cost you anything.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought you were a bit I don't know. It took about 2 weeks for them to fit rather than a week in the end, or were you allowing for a?
Well, yeah.
Seems a backwards way of doing it.
I was allowing for the downtime because in some regards they didn't know what they were doing. Particularly the MMSP contract.
Yes.
And the additional gauges required, they had no prior experience of, so they did a lot of double work.
Gosh.
So that added days and days to the installation.
That's true.
Because they hadn't done their homework about what was needed in order to get it right first time. So that took lots of extra visits. And but yeah, they were here for almost 2 weeks, weren't they?
Hopefully they'll know next time.
They will know next time, that's right. Yeah.
Can I ask how you found your installers? It doesn't sound necessarily like you'd recommend them.
It's been complicated because of the COVID crisis. We were due to have it installed in early March and paid a significant deposit towards that being done. Then everybody went into lockdown, and the communication from them then went a bit pear-shaped, and I think possibly I've suffered from them dealing with lockdown, going into lockdown, being in lockdown, then coming out of lockdown has not helped with a smooth installation. Said that the engineers who were here were very personable, and once they got started, they've been very helpful. I would probably recommend the people who have done our installation. And as Tony said, with regards to some of the technical aspect of it, they will know more about it next time they do it. They are a national company. They have done loads of these before, but the MMSP contract was the bit of the system that was new to them.
So you said you had 2 quotes. I just wondered how you found the people. Did you go to the MCS website to find them, or were they recommended? Or
no, they weren't recommended. I did it by searching on the internet for air source heat pump installers in Buckinghamshire. I ended up with a few people who I would not recommend because their pre-sales service wasn't great, and they had a very, very pushy salesman. But the national companies that I spoke to, I would probably recommend getting quotes from. And in the end, they were fairly close on price.
Do they do the survey and quote? Sorry, I think I keep speaking over someone. Apologies. Do they do the survey and the quote?
I'm sorry, is that Vicky?
Yes.
Hi, Vicky. I haven't got your picture up for some reason. Can you say the question again?
Do they do the surveys and the quotes, or do you need?
Oh yeah, okay. Yes, they did it all. Yes. Yeah. So there was an initial estimate from a sales guy, and then an engineer came and measured up the house in detail, and produced an EPC, and a formal costed quote was produced on that basis.
Thank you.
They did come up with slightly different versions of what the grant would be, didn't they? Which was interesting. Everybody had a slightly different way of doing the calculation.
Yes, yes. I think that was perhaps part of our nervousness at the beginning, and why I kept going back to the online grant estimator, because the companies who gave us quotes, as Surinder said, appeared to have a slightly different way of calculating what the RHI grant was likely to be, and it differed by, I can't remember the difference, it differed by several £1,000s, which you would have thought wasn't possible. But now I've got an EPC certificate. I'm pretty confident that, well, now I've got an EPC certificate. The grant, the actual grant, will be based on the numbers that are on that document, and I can use that document and put that information into the grant calculator. So I'm pretty confident that I now know what the numbers are going to be. And yeah, by the end of the 7 years, the grant will pretty much have paid for the whole of the installation.
What happens if you sell your house?
I haven't looked at that in detail. I'm pretty confident that the scheme has been so thoroughly worked out, because this sort of scheme is not new, that they would have taken that into account, and that the ownership of the system will transfer with the property, and if we sell the house, you probably just have to tell the scheme administrators who you have sold it to, and they will start making the payments to the new owners of the house, and stop making the payments to you. Yeah.
What is appalling is that they're still putting up new houses with gas boilers that are all going to have to be ripped out.
Yes. Yes, it is. It's only one of the possible solutions. Coming off the gas main completely is one of the solutions that's going to be necessary, but it may be that that's not the solution for the whole of the housing stock. It is possible that people will remain connected to gas, but with a change in the mix of what's actually supplied to your boiler. So
Yeah.
they could increase the percentage of hydrogen that's in the system. They could also add, gosh, what was I reading about the other day?
Methane?
Methane, possibly, yeah, but biogas, methane could be added to the system as well, which, although is a combustion process, it's a step in the right direction. So I suspect that in 20 or 30 years' time, there will still be a proportion. I don't know. Will we still have a gas distribution system? It seems. I don't know.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Yeah, perhaps we should be hoping that they just turn the gas off completely.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we should be hoping for, isn't it? They turn the gas off completely, and we all transfer to air source heat pumps. And yeah, Libby, in which case you're right. All of the gas boilers that are now being installed ought to be ripped out and replaced over the course of the next 15 or 20 years.
Mm. And biomass, I'm quite shocked that they are promoting biomass.
Yes, because because it relies on combustion.
Yeah.
So it still produces CO2.
I thought that had been thoroughly debunked.
It still seems to be a part of the mix. I haven't done any reading on the pros and cons or what the actual carbon footprint of the biomass boiler is currently thought to be. I guess it depends whether or not you can capture the output from it. I have no idea whether or not that sort of technology is included.
Mm.
But yes, heat pumps appear to be the greenest way of doing it.
Interesting.
It's probably best done. The biggest financial benefit is going to come from replacing an off-grid boiler. So if you've got an oil-fired boiler or a wood-burning stove, then an air source heat pump is going to be, you are going to benefit financially from putting an air source heat pump in.
Sunak's green package. Someone has worked out on Twitter that it will cut UK emissions by 0.14%.
Oh.
Wow.
Don't hold your breath.
It's not much, is it?
No.
No, not enough. Okay, we are coming up for 5 o'clock. We were scheduled just to do this for an hour. Are there any other questions?
Can you send us the Word document you were talking about with the links to the...
Yes, certainly. Yep, I will. Some of the links that are on there at the moment link to documents that I've saved on my own computer, so they're local links. Yes, I will tidy up the links and I'll send this.
Thank you.
And of course, if anybody wants to speak to us, you know, for a longer conversation, then just give us an email and we can, you know, arrange a physically distanced chat or a telephone call or something like that, and you know, give you more detail about our experience. That's fine too.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Jargon Root. That was useful.
Bit drier than the last one. But I hope it was a good introduction. Sorry if it was a bit dense and a bit dry.
I think some of it went in.
Right.
I didn't catch who your actual installers were in the end.
Oh, okay. So we use a company called Northern Gas Heating,
Oh,
based in the Midlands. Couldn't find anybody local. Couldn't find anybody more local than that.
and overall you would recommend them?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
Eventually,
their engineers were very competent.
yes.
The back office was not, was a little bit frustrating.
Right. Okay.
I also noticed on Twitter today that they are having a training session for heating engineers and plumbers so that they get familiar with how to deal with these new technologies. So, but they're going to be attending webinars, so I'm not sure how helpful this will be.
Right. Do you know who's running those?
I can find out. I was trying to look on my phone and I found it on Twitter, but of course I can't find it again now.
Oh, right. That's a shame.
Is Trump taking part?
Well, he would be twittering.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll put when I found it, I'll send a link in our WhatsApp.
Great. All right. Okay.
So this has been recorded, so hopefully we'll be able to get a link to the recording, and then we can send it out to anybody who might be interested who didn't get to the meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very useful. Thank you.
Yes.
That's great. Good. Good. All right. Shall we close the chat for today?
Yeah, bye.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, everybody. Stay safe. Speak to you soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
So you're going to close that, Surinder?
Yep. So I'm going to stop recording. There we go. And there we go. Okay.
You're going to close it down from your end?
Yeah, so I'm going to say leave now.
Yeah.
That I've stopped the recording. There we go. Are you still there, Vicky? Right.
Hi, Surinder, sorry.
That's all right. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. Sorry. I just had to go and get Sophia set up for her drama, which starts in about 5 minutes.
Oh, right. Is that, hello, Sophia.
I'll come get the sellotape and do this bit. Yes, thank you very much for that. That was really helpful. I'm sorry I had to duck out for a bit. But,
No, that's fine. That's fine. Hopefully that wasn't, like Javmir says, it is a bit dry. It's not it's not the most, razzle dazzle topic.
But it was really useful. It was really useful to see it. It was really useful to see what's inside. It was really useful to hear about how many different forms. The fact that you need to do the insulation first. All of it was really useful. So I just think, yeah, it was great for me. Thank you.
That's good. And I suspect if anybody does go ahead with it, as they go through the process, they may remember, oh yes, I was told about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just the fact that it's even there.
I know.
Yeah. It does feel a shame that you have to pay up front, but maybe there's a way as a community people could do that a bit differently. But no, it's great. So are you enjoying having it, or are you?
Well, like Joan said, it's different, and in some ways, if we just turned it on and left it, we probably wouldn't notice any difference between that and having a gas boiler. But because we've got the solar hot water as well, and we want to make sure that we get as much gain from the solar hot water, we're trying to understand when's the best time to turn the heat pump on and off. It may turn out that we just need to leave it on all the time.
Yeah.
But we don't know yet.
No, but I guess it's trial and error.
Yes, and we've got spreadsheets and graphs and all sorts of things. So, we're having fun with it.
Excellent. I've just noticed you're still recording. Is that right?
Oh no, I should have stopped it.
That's okay.
Oh no, I'm not recording. It's being recorded. So there are two people recording it. Peter Armstrong's recording it and I'm recording it. So I've stopped mine, but you won't be able to stop.
That's fine.
Peter will stop his shortly.
We did that too. We had a couple of people just in case.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yes. So I'd really love to catch up. I just conscious I need to go and sort Sophia out for her lesson now.
You don't do that, and we'll speak shortly.
Yeah, that'll be lovely. It's really nice to see you anyway, and thanks again.
Okay.
Maybe
Bye.
email the recording. I'll forward it on to the people that couldn't make today.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Bye.